do.
I'll take one.
Well, I just got those two. It's the same thing. It doesn't look like it's the same.
And
Good.
then I'll resend it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
one more,
Sure, why
if you have it.
Yeah, I spoke to him.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, it's May the 14th. We're here at City Hall for our regular monthly meeting. I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Albright,
Here.
Mayor Kathy,
Here.
Mr. Wallace,
Here.
Mr. Putnam.
Here. Okay. Our agenda has been posted, and we all have a copy of it. We'll move right into that. Dina, turn it over to you.
Okay, so one of the items you have is a resolution, and we have some guests from the EPA and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with us that are going to answer questions if you have any. But essentially, we've been meeting with FEMA and a group from Army Corps and EPA to talk about potential projects. And one of the ones that has gotten a lot of interest is regional stormwater detention within the city to collect and address some of our stormwater issues. So what this resolution allows us to do is allows city staff to solicit, apply for grants, provide letters, or any sort of grant documentation that's required to try to find funding sources for that. So that's part of why these gentlemen are here. I'll introduce them. We have Rick Durbrell from EPA, David Apple from Army Corps, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your
Frank McCollum.
Frank McCollum, and you're with?
I'm with the state disaster recovery coordinator.
Okay, great. So we're trying to pull together as many funding sources, compatible funding sources that we can to try to make this project happen. It's a larger project that we have in mind. So it would, we're looking at some potential brownfield sites within the city that EPA could help us with, and then some regional detention areas. And ultimately, what we're hoping, if we're able to secure the funding to do this, is that we could eliminate our 8th Street beach outfall and get rid of the water quality issues that we have around 8th Street. So, does anyone have questions on the resolution itself?
I guess I should do it.
It was, so it's kind of just a formality to show that the city is interested in pursuing the project and interested in pursuing grant funding for it.
And then we'll clear up the water by 8th Street. That's our goal.
That's, yeah, so it would be,
Okay.
yeah, the goal is water, to address flooding, water attenuation, but also water quality. That's right.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Did you all want to jump in and contribute anything?
We're really here to answer questions that you may have about, the project and about what our agencies can do to help. And Frank, is there anything you'd like to, add into the site?
I'm not familiar with the content of the resolution, but of course, post-disaster, there's many grant programs that open up. Some of those are federal pass-through grant programs that originate the federal government, pass through various state agencies, and others can be directly funded by federal agencies like EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers. So, my experience has been that just the authority to be able to pursue grants, there's still lots of checkpoints between the authorization of pursuit and the actual submittal of an application. Once some of the funding is better known, once it becomes available, as well as some of the cost estimates related to projects and so forth. But I guess in general, that's about all I would have to add. And in addition, happy to answer any questions I can do as well.
When would this start?
Immediately. So
Yes, that's
we've,
quick enough.
yeah, we've had discussions, but yeah.
Yeah, we've been in conversations, and there were a lot of different ideas that when we came and talked with Dina and Tanya about the different activities that you currently have going on and some of the things that you'd like to do. It's like, oh, there's a sort of a bigger picture here that we might be able to help stitch together, at least from a vision perspective. Put that together, and that would allow us to start looking at some construction documents further down the road on how the stormwater management part or brownfield might tie into this bigger picture. Get into those construction documents, and then hopefully eventually get into some implementation dollars. So Army Corps is here. There are lots of different places where we can interject into that as we go along, but sort of opening up that door so that we can start that discussion and how that might look, and then where that funding might come in the future. That's really what the resolution is. I'm sure there are other things that they have in mind, but from FEMA and the Interagency Recovery Coordination Team, which is who Dave and I and Frank work with, that's sort of what we're here to try to do.
Other than discussions, Dina, do we have some kind of overview of what we're trying to do? I mean, is this just truly a discussion of?
Yeah, this is just the discussion to get the ball rolling, because we've met and we know there's some different funding sources that could all kind of be combined with it. But as far as I can kind of describe it and tell you the different elements and then kind of the steps that we thought we would go forward with.
We've gone that far.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what I mean. We've done more than somebody has tried to give some vision to what we're trying to do,
Right,
other than just discuss.
yeah.
Okay, and you folks are on board with trying to,
Yeah.
are you red lights or green lights?
We're working on green lights.
We want to make sure the city is ready to go and is committed, and then we've got some initial resources that we think we can bring to bear. We've got to make sure they're finalized, but it's almost like a catch-22.
Yeah.
So we're pretty sure we've got the funding, but until the city says, hey, we're committed,
Right.
let's go forward, that's what'll kick off the rest of it.
And we would be looking at this thing, I guess, in phases too, because each part would, build on the next one, so. I think the first one, was the Brownsville, really looking at that, and then further down the line, we can bring in some of the other organizations, like the Corps may be able to come in and help do a planning study here on the stormwater and the flooding, and be able to bring some of its resources too as well. So the nice thing is you've got now with this recovery mission, these federal agencies, that we can bring some of these resources to the table, and as we said, try to fill in some of those gaps.
So this would change the water coming into the Gulf?
Potentially downstream, yeah. or
Instead
upstream.
of being very dark, it would be nice.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about, it's a concern. So we have the concern with flooding, but then we also have the brown water
Oh,
quality.
terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
we're
that's
hopeful.
one of the things that as if we, further down do a study, one of the things that we look at is how to eliminate that discharge, or if you couldn't eliminate it, how to reduce it so that you don't get the impacts that you're seeing now.
Yeah, last week was it last week it was so bad?
We had the rain.
No, terrible.
All right, any other questions from our citizens?
I got a question on the grants there. I've dealt with grants before, with the federal agency. What is your match typically on a grant?
On this particular one, there's no match required.
Okay.
That's the first one, so that's not the building portion, but that's the initial scoping it out and getting everything together, working with the community, get their input, and make sure that the city and the community are all on board with the direction of that green infrastructure, stormwater management strategy.
All right, anything else?
Will this have an impact on the canal?
The marina canal?
Yes.
I don't expect it would.
I don't see how.
Once you get, there's the small ditches and canals that connect a street, but it doesn't have very much flow between, so we don't expect any impact there.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2019-05.
Second.
Well, we need a motion to read.
Motion to read.
Motion and a second. Any opposition to reading, please do so.
Resolution 2019-05, a resolution of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida relating to the city stormwater collection system and regional detention, making findings, authorizing city staff to pursue appropriate local, private, state, and federal grant funding sources for the project, designating authorized representatives, providing assurances, providing for conflict severability and effective date.
Okay, is there any opposition to resolution 2019-05? Let the record reflect it passes 4-0. Thank you guys very much for your involvement. We need it. All right, moving on. Lynn, is that all on that before we move on? Okay, we'll do that. Somehow I didn't think y'all wanted to stay for the rest of the year.
We just appreciate the opportunity.
Sure thing. Thank you for coming. Good to see you all of you. Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
Okay, guys, we got some seats in here, folks. Okay. All right, moving on. Staff, who is staff today?
I wasn't sure at the time.
All right, you got it. Variance, or number A, I guess, under planning zone.
Variance for 414 Highway 98. The property at 414 Highway 98, Unit A and B was a duplex, with each unit individually on platted lots. Each unit is independently owned. The homes were destroyed during Hurricane Michael, and the petitioners have requested that each would be allowed to rebuild as a detached, single-family home.
Before we go into more detail, let me make one preliminary comment. Right before the meeting, I learned that the notice for this was sent out by mail to the neighbors like usual, but no sign was posted. Our land development regulations say post a sign. It'd be best to table this and postpone it and get the notice proper, but that is your decision. I know we're operating under difficult times with everything going on with the hurricane, but that's the correct way to do it.
I'm comfortable moving on, but that's up to y'all if you think we need to post it on them for those that are vacant beside it can see it.
I agree. I think we should just go ahead.
No consequences for moving on.
The decision could be challenged, if nobody challenges it, there's no consequence.
I'm sure these folks would like an answer.
I prefer to hold off, but if I'm in a minority, I'm a minority.
Well, you have to advertise for, you have to post a sign for,
I'm not sure.
Well, if we have a rule, we have a rule, so that's my bit.
We don't always follow the rules sometimes.
No, but we always follow the rule posting that sign because it's of particular interest to the citizens. So if you don't post it this time, does that set a precedent that can be questioned every single time?
Well, I've got a point there, the 35 citizens that are left. I mean, there's not that many people here right now compared to.
we sent the notices, Adrian?
And advertised in the newspaper.
Oh, did you? Okay.
That should be sufficient, shouldn't it? I know what you're saying.
That ordinarily is strong notice, because I didn't think we always do newspaper notice, but
Okay.
we do have rules that post a sign, so I just wanted everyone to be aware.
We're just sort of, you wanna post a sign and wait?
Yeah, if we have a rule, we have a rule.
Jerry, what about you?
I just soon go ahead. I agree with you, actually, Mayor.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I say we go ahead, if they challenge it, they challenge it.
All right, we're gonna move ahead. Adrian, continue.
They're requesting a variance of 2.5 feet on each side, so they can build single-family homes. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended denial 5-0.
5-0.
So how much space would be between each structure then?
I think it was 2.5 feet.
2.5 feet
It'd
between?
be 5 feet.
5
So
feet
5
between the
feet between
buildings.
the structure.
No, 10. There'd be 10 between the structures.
So some additional background on,
Wait a minute.
They're requesting a 2.5 foot variance, so they'd be 5 off the setback, so it'd be
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
It's written differently than most of them. Most of them write 5 on here. This one wrote 2.5. So instead of a 7.5 foot setback, they want a 5 foot setback on each lot for 10 between the two.
That's not even close to what it says. Or
No,
that's
it
not the
says-
way I'm interpreting it.
It says 2.5 in here.
Yeah.
They're asking for 2.5
Look at
off
your
the
map,
setback.
man. Look at your map, and help me make sure I'm on page 14.
Okay.
All right, so if you split the structures, you have, what would they have on the east boundary? Would they have their 7.5 feet? It shows 9, I guess that 9.3 is the current setback?
Yes.
Well, what would that setback be?
It's 9.3 currently, but it's gonna, she wants it to be 2.5, so 5.
So she wants,
Well, yeah, there's an extra foot on that one side. But, it's supposed to be 7, and can I speak or no?
Well, just a moment, just a
Okay.
moment. You're who?
Deborah Willis, I'm the one that.
Okay, just a second before we,
so 5 on the east side from the lot line to the new structure,
5 on the right, 5 on the left.
okay?
10 feet between the
10
two
feet between.
structures.
2 lots, 5 foot, 5 foot, 5 foot, 5 foot.
But, so then it would be 10 feet between the two new structures.
Right.
But with diminishing the lot line between the lot and the new house, then their neighbors are gonna have less space between. They'll have they'll be minus 2.5 feet. So they'll be closer to their neighbor, not the duplex, to their next door lot.
It'll be 5 feet from the property
Yeah.
line.
So it doesn't just affect them, it affects their 2 lots next to it.
It's kind of surprising to me that it was a 5-0 vote from planning and zoning against it.
Well, we gave the permission to build back in the footprint.
Right.
If we, I mean, I've got people on my street that lots are bigger than this, they had a duplex. If they wanna build separate, if we allow this, I mean, there's just, to me, it opens a door to over and over and over again. We've made a concession by, on the 10th, letting everybody come back in the footprint.
I agree with you, Rex, and it's not just affecting these 2 owners, it's affecting the other lots next to them.
I want to make another interjection. So we're 7 months out from hurricane time, trying to steer us to doing things more formally. So this is a quasi-judicial hearing, that's what all variances are. So the 2 initial steps for that hearing just means we're gonna take people's input from the crowd. But the initial steps for all those types of hearings would be that we swear in anybody who wants to testify today, and that before we get going any further, that everyone from the council discloses any conversations they've had with folks about this project, whether for or against, and just put that on the record so that it won't be prejudicial.
there's none of, see, the minutes don't reflect that that's what we're doing.
I know, but that's.
So
that's
I'm,
what-
well,
Those steps.
okay, so we're gonna, I know the steps now, but it's just that, when we put the minutes out, we need to lay it out so people know what the heck we're doing.
So if anyone here would like to speak to this today, I just ask you to put your right hand up and swear that you'll tell the full truth today under the penalty of perjury.
Is that in the comments too?
This is for those, that's not for us,
Okay.
that's for the public
Yeah.
that is here,
Okay.
that's not for us.
Any of the public who
So,
wants to talk to
Ms.
us, so that
Williams,
would
you
include the
may
applicants.
raise your hand and.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you swear to tell the truth today about this application under penalty of perjury?
yes.
For the record, please announce your name and your address.
Deborah Willis, 5027 Sundance Lane, Tallahassee, Florida.
Thank you, Ms. Willis. And to the council, if anyone's had conversations about this project, the applicant or people opposed before today, before the meeting today, please disclose that for the record.
I've had none.
I've had none.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Russ.
Okay, this, piece of property is owned by myself and, Ruth and, Bill Yates. I've owned it for 16 years. They bought it just about a year ago. And, then the hurricane came through and, basically, well, actually it burned. You know, it kind of survived the hurricane, but then it burned down. I'm not someone that wants to just come in and some fly-by-night that wants to come in and, you know, make $1 off of, you know, building a single-family home. My mother has lived here for 40 years and my 2 sisters. And I eventually, probably in about 3 or 4 years, would like to live here myself. This structure was built back in the 60s. And since that time, it's been surrounded by single-family homes. And so I was hoping maybe to get you to see the uniqueness of the situation in terms of 2 single-family homes would blend in much more than a duplex there. I mean, if you drive down that stretch of beach, it's single-family homes all the way down 98. It's not a string of 12 or 20 condos or whatever. It's just one unit that's surrounded by homes. And what we were asking for was a 2.5 feet on the sides, 2.5, you know, each in the middle. That would give us 10 foot in the middle between structures, and it would, yes, it would give us 5 to the property line, which means there would only be 12.5 between ourselves and our neighbor. I see in here that one of my neighbors is against it. I did not know that until I read that here today. I know that my other neighbor on the east side has sent positive feedback, an email to Tanya Castro. I don't see it in here, but she did. So all I can say about the other neighbor on the other side is, you know, they are, that she told me, Kay and Thad Boswick told me they were trying to buy the corner lot, so they would have 75 feet of frontage, because they already had the 50 feet on the west side. And they wanted to know, you know, whether we were interested in buying half of their lot. And I told her, I didn't even know that that was possible, but that, you know, this is what we had wanted to do. So, but I know definitely that Bonnie Skipper on the other side sent positive feedback. You know, we're both eager to rebuild. And I guess I came just to try to get you to see the uniqueness of this situation rather than, you know, just using a blanket rule for everything.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland.
Ms. Logan, we should be sworn in. Did you raise your hand earlier when I, okay.
Yeah, but if you, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Is that what you need?
Good enough.
Okay. The P&Z board, the meeting I attended on this, has already seen several of these same instances come up. They've ruled against variances and all the other requests. They stated that this one, again, just like the others, did not meet the criteria for variance, and so I'm wondering what would make this case any different. They all noted that it was the same, that there were options to remedy the issue, and so what would make this case any different?
Anybody else? Is anyone of the elected officials, is anyone aware of the variance coming before us like this before, since the storm?
I believe we've had a variance before.
I said like this for the.
Identical to it?
I was just curious, I don't recall.
No, I don't recall.
Okay.
I do have one comment. This one's not about procedure. Normally, it'd be hard to justify a variance for something like this. If you were inclined to want to approve this, something that stands out as being strange about this, unique, and may not be the case in all the others, This is a residential low density. Normally, you don't have any townhouses in residential low density. These were built prior to those rules. So as far as a justification for a variance, I mean, that is an angle probably that makes sense, because while you are doing something that goes beyond what you previously have adopted as far as what can be done here, at least it remedies that townhouse and residential low density scenario.
Okay, is there any other comments before we close the hearing from anyone here? Okay, we'll close the hearing, return to the table for council comments.
My concern is if you make a variance, if you do this variance now, I'm sure there's, as Rex mentioned or alluded to, there are lots of them that are ready to jump in and have us go for another variance. You know, they bought the house as a duplex. They knew it was a duplex when they bought it. It wasn't anything brand new. I would be just concerned that we're starting a precedent.
Anybody else? You know, in the big picture, we do have rules, and we have had, and we're gonna probably have more requests. But these folks, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Michael. And I'm more interested in trying to be as accommodating and as friendly and as user-friendly as possible. If you look at the RLD, residential low density zoning category, Nick just mentioned, you couldn't even put this there. And for me, given the circumstances our city's in, and you have people that want to return and want to build, and I don't see that this is causing a problem with anything. And if we're gonna stay hung up on, or I'm not gonna stay hung up on that means you gotta do it every time. I think every situation has its own merits. And I personally am gonna support this because I think it's part of showing a helpful side to people in our community who want to rebuild. And I just don't see an issue here. Any other comments? Chair will entertain a motion.
All right, I make a motion to deny this request of the variance.
I have a motion to deny the request.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? Call the roll.
Ms. Albrecht?
This is to deny it, correct? Yes.
Mayor Catton?
No.
Mr. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Putnam?
Yes.
Okay, in essence, the motion fails because it's 2-2.
And we need to resolve this and have a decision on whether to approve or not.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Oh, the motion was to not deny, that failed, so we still need to resolve whether the variance will be approved
Isn't
or
it
not.
fairly, well, I guess we won't assume anything, but,
Last meeting, we had a variance similar to this that was 2-2 as well. It is being rescheduled on a later meeting, I think, next month.
Is that what you're recommending? Since it's a 2-2 vote? Does that mean it automatically?
well,
Well, is there any other motion?
yeah, that's the next step. Is there any other motion? I mean,
Okay, I would move that we consider another meeting to discuss this, so we get a deciding vote. Hopefully, we will have that many people here. Is that possible? Is that a bad motion?
It's not a bad motion.
no, no, I mean, we really don't need that motion. It's gonna, I mean, if it's,
Of course, 2 people may vote against that motion.
yeah, I think, for me, Nick, the motion that failed, it's just pretty obvious. I'll just say we reschedule. reschedule it to the June first meeting. Or table, yeah, well, you can table what you want, but I don't see making a motion is necessary, I mean, we'll just
Okay.
put it back on there for the June meeting,
June 11th.
whatever that is. Good enough?
Yeah.
Moving on?
Good enough.
Okay, help me out.
Y'all just come back.
Just come back, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you take care. I feel like I'm running over here, but I'm not, okay, all right, if I do, you beat me, all right. All right, moving on, staff, B.
Letter B, the planning and zoning board recommended approval 5-0 of a change to the commercial setbacks in the rear from 20 feet to 10 feet to match the rest of the setbacks throughout the LDR. If the council agrees and wishes to proceed, we will schedule an ordinance for first reading at the next meeting.
So then all setbacks will be 10.
In the rear.
On commercial.
Okay, so we're not actually doing a first reading,
No.
but if we were, the ordinance would look a lot
Yes.
like this. Okay. And Tanya wanted just input from the council that they were comfortable moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so assign it a number and assign it a meeting for the first reading.
Perfect. Letter C, the planning and zoning board recommended approval 5-0 of having residential use in general commercial, requiring them to follow residential guidelines. So if you build residential and general commercial, you need to follow the residential guidelines in the LDR. If the council wishes to move forward with that, we'll need
It's
that.
already in there.
It is not already.
I can address some of that. It's in there for certain aspects and not for others, or probably not.
I think it's only setbacks. I think it
So-
references residential
It's
setbacks.
in there, I mean, that's never, we've done that for years. We've done that for years.
Follow the rules of residential setbacks in commercial.
Absolutely. What isn't in there? I'm curious.
All right, so part of the issue here is when the land development regulations were amended in February, some of the deletions of text created more confusing situations about what to do with the remaining text. So what we have in section 2.0203, the mixed use section, under,
Is this anything we have?
no, this, I just
You
pulled
just-
up-
Okay, you're pulling this out of your.
Out of my, yeah.
I got it. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. You're good at that. You're good at that. Take me a week.
All right, so we do have rules that we've always had, that are still on the books that say,
Arrange. Yeah, I don't know of anything in conflict personally, but I've looked at that. Did you say mixed use?
it's in the mixed use.
Tourist mixed use? Well,
No,
that's-
it's just titled mixed use. And it's a section that talks about doing residential development, primarily talks about doing
That's the only mixed use
residential
it has, tourist
general
mixed use.
commercial and tourist. But it's
And it's
it's
in
not,
two categories only, it's in the Corey Pruitt property and it's in the St. Joe property. That's the only mixed use, zone category there.
I was looking for the part, I think there's a part that says build to residential, or sorry, build to commercial building standards, but anyways, I'll read what this is really about, since nobody has it in front of them. We may have to postpone this conversation to the next meeting, if there's more materials. This is from 2.0203B. It's titled Residential Development Standards for Structures Developed or Redeveloped in General Commercial and Tourist Commercial Zoning Districts. And this is the new version after our amendments from February. Residential structures developed or redeveloped in general commercial or tourist commercial zoning districts shall adhere to the residential density requirements as set forth above. In addition, residential or mixed-use developments or redevelopments built in general commercial or tourist commercial zoning districts may be eligible to have variances from the requirement of the LDR for the development standards relating to setbacks, landscape buffers, and parking if justified by an application for a mini PUD. The process or maybe completed deleting that section. All right, so the beginning part that I read is really the key thing here that I've talked with Tanya in the past, where it says that they shall adhere to the residential density requirements as set forth above. So the question is, do we not use the density requirements that are in our general table for general commercial, tourist commercial that state one amount, and instead apply a residential standard instead? That would be strange because we've got in our table specific density standards for general commercial and tourist commercial. They're pretty high levels. Would we apply those from the table or rely on this sentence that says adhere to the residential density requirements as set forth above? So the background on the residential density requirements as set forth above, there was language previously in the LDR, which we recently deleted, that talked about having lower actually having higher residential density if some process was gone through and some application was made. I think that language was referring to the residential density requirements above, was talking about that process, which is eliminated. I don't think it's talking about the density for, let's say, I don't know, general residential. Since we do have a table that provides a specific density for general commercial, for tourist commercial. Now, what the Planning and Zoning Board has weighed in and said is they said, we want residential density standards to apply in general commercial and tourist commercial. So if that's what you're also inclined to do, we'll write up an ordinance, we'll begin the process, and we'll amend the land development regulations.
Nick, that's just, but what you're reading is from mixed use.
It is. It's not from the tourist mixed use category, it's this separate portion of.
I don't even see where it's at.
Why don't we table this to make sure that we know what they want us to consider?
They is us.
Well, but the planning and zoning presented it to us, so that's who they. I'm talking about planning and zoning, because they're the ones who presented this, so.
Yeah, we're digging a hole and getting,
I don't truly understand where that's.
Well, there's not really any backup materials.
Right.
Tanya's not here. I mean,
Right.
that's a perfectly reasonable suggestion.
Yeah, just.
What I was just trying to provide some
Yeah.
Okay,
background.
we'll take table C and, okay, figure out how that is applicable to. Just clarification for me. We aren't trying to put that, are you saying that's, you're interpreting that to mean in every zoning category? That's what, I mean, I'm a little confused what you just talked about.
The way
Not that I wanna get into a long drawn out thing, cause we're gonna table it, but as far as every zoning category, that language isn't there.
No, and I would say follow the table that shows all the rules for every zoning category, but you do have this remnant sentence that creates the argument that you actually apply a residential standard in general commercial and tourist commercial. That's, I believe, what this is about, and I think.
Okay, we'll just regroup, go ahead. Yeah, Zach, you
Yeah, me
got.
and Jason are, got wind last minute, maybe this is on the table, and these are huge changes you're talking about that potentially getting thrown in here on this density thing. I've got an email from Ms. Castro sent May 1st, they're talking about a lot I have zone where you put a triplex, you may no longer do it because planning and zoning has made a different recommendation, so I think y'all are potentially have a huge change in what we've all done for the last 40 years here with that on the table, so just, I appreciate you tabling it, but ask you to please be cautious with what's actually on the table.
It is a big change, and I'm not even sure what Ms. Castro is gonna recommend on this.
And planning and zoning, if you don't mind, went through a year and a half of dealing with the comprehensive plan and getting this together. And when we all rolled out, we're keeping 18 units in the per acre. That was kind of what was the whole process. And now there's some little word, residential density, and I think we're mushrooming it.
Well, that's
We
why,
have a table that says, and I know what P and Z is saying, the way I see it is they're wanting you to go to residential standards in a general commercial, then you're down to 9 units per acre, or whatever it is.
so before rumors start, when
Well-
we leave this room, seriously, let's table it until we get documentation of exactly what they're presenting to the council before we make it a mushroom.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do. Everybody's good at the table, we're gonna table,
Right.
and those of you concerned about it, keep your ears to the ground. That's easy to do, man. Okay? All right, Philip Hall.
Yes, sir. Just a quick update on the dune project. The first four dunes on the west end of the beach from starting at Miramar Drive and going back towards the east, the first four there is the ones I'm talking about, have been completed. The downside, there is a downside. Birds have moved in and nested within those four dunes. So that means we can't plant sea oaks, that means we can't put the sand fence in until they decide to move out.
Are they Democrats?
That's the world we're living in, so that's what we gotta deal with.
Birds, what kind of birds?
The kind that nest.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what they are. We should start seeing sand being placed on the east end of town at the county line, moving back towards the west. The plan is to move from east to west and meet in the middle, get this job done a little bit quicker. So we should start seeing sand being placed down there on the county line end, this week. And that's it for the update on the new project right now.
May I ask some questions?
Please.
Are the access points, for people to access the beach for trash removal and stuff like that, are they gonna be the same, or are those being changed?
No, the points, the same access points will be the same as they were before the hurricane.
Perfect.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminded me of something else. During the areas that the construction crew is working in, those areas will be closed off. There'll be signage, there'll be ropes and all that good stuff, plainly showing where the area closed off will be. And we ask that, A, nobody goes through the construction area, and B, nobody crosses over the dunes that have already been put in place. We don't need to destroy those, we don't need to start harming those. We need to get vegetation planted, and we need to get the sand fenced up. So please stay off the dunes and please stay out of the construction area. Construction areas.
Jeannie, does it affect our June 1st, 300 people showing up here to help plant sea oaks?
Maybe we get 200 people to run birds out first. Ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
So what do we do? I mean, everything just shuts down? Or is that the?
We have to wait for the birds to move out before we do.
No, but I mean, for the June 1st,
Oh,
advertised, come help.
Right, we won't be doing construction that day on the beach.
Are we gonna plant?
Is
We
that-
won't plant.
No, we will be doing
from the
the
east.
volunteer planting.
Oh, you will be.
Yes,
I
we will.
misunderstood.
I didn't.
It'll be on the far end, not where the birds are. We're trying to keep the birds on
Are you
the
feeding,
west
are we
end.
feeding them properly?
We're
Okay.
encouraging them
How
to
about
sit there.
cats?
Okay.
Yes, we're encouraging them.
I understand.
We are.
Somehow, I don't know how we're doing that, but yeah, that's what we're doing.
You're a short time.
I'm just saying, man, I don't know.
Okay,
That's what
so that's the update, I mean,
Yes,
you're
that's
good?
it, that's the update.
All right.
Could I ask Phil?
Yes, sir, come on.
Ron Atchison, 102 South 35th Street. The sewer progress is coming right along. I was talking to the sewer guy today, and they're unhooking everybody from the city sewer. And what is the reconnection process involved with that?
You want me to cover that now, or?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
There is no, there won't be a reconnection fee or anything like that, but whenever you rebuild your home or repair your home or whatever it is that you have to do, your plumber will just tie you back in as you were before.
So if I don't get my house built for 8 months, then I don't have sewer for 8 months again still?
No, that's not true. If,
That's why I'm.
when the system's back up and running,
Right?
I'm assuming you have a camper or something?
Yes.
Okay. Once the sewer's back up and running, we get that back online, you can tie into that.
Oh, we can tie back in, okay,
Absolutely.
that's just what I was asking, I wasn't sure what the
I
process
thought,
was
you-
and.
I thought you were asking once the house is back in place. But
No.
no, once the system's back up and running, whether you're in a house, whether you're in a camper, whether you're in some other structure,
I
you'll
thought
be
we
able
were,
to tie into the
I thought we were gonna be stuck until we got my house built to tie back into the sewer, and that's what I was
No,
asking.
no.
Okay.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right.
On that,
Can't follow up.
Bill, some of us that are ready waiting on sewer, what do we do? I mean,
As far as,
well, this disconnect thing, I mean, are we need to do an extra step now, or? Like my office, a few homeowners over there, they're all, we're all just waiting on sewer to be told, we're told we can use it. Do we need to do something, have our plumbers do something, are we getting disconnected? I wasn't following that.
okay, I got you. All right, I'm on the same page with you now. If your building, if it looks like everything's intact from, and I can't tell you what your line looks like off the top of my head, but if the cameraing, when we run the camera through the system, all that good stuff, if your line is fine, we're not gonna touch it. We're not gonna disconnect you, we're not gonna do anything like that. If we see damage, say when the connection comes in at the main, we see a crack or something like that, then yeah, we'll dig it up, we'll pull it apart. But in your particular instance, or if somebody else, Mr. John Smith, living on South 30 whatever street, his house is fine. The plan is to fix whatever the issue is and then reconnect everything back as it is, not just completely disconnect you from the house and then just, drive down the road. Vacant lots, we are disconnecting them completely and just capping them.
All right, moving on. Ordinance 719. This is, the second reading. Doesn't say, but it is the second reading, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
I would assume Adrian will probably do a brief presentation of this. This is the floodplain ordinance.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Adrian or anybody else in the room, maybe Dina, I'm looking over the version in our packets, and it does not include some changes to the limitations on placement of fill language. It's the compensatory fill language. It's on, it says page 26 and 33. I just want to make sure this is the correct version before we proceed. Dina, you'll probably recall Ms. Captro and you and I worked on some language to provide some opportunities to have some relief from this rule. If you use stem wall foundation or small, I think it was maybe 12 inches of fill, is that deliberately not in here, or do we just have an older version of this ordinance?
Which page is that?
Here,
Page 26.
this page.
It was in the first one.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is just the wrong version of this. This is our package.
Do you have any scratch outs on yours? This is.
I think, so you're saying about the specific language of 12 inches, because this is how I remember it, that compensatory storage, but then the last sentence where it says floodplain administrator may reduce or waive this requirement based on site-specific conditions and local drainage. I think that gives
The other
the
language
floodplain
was
administrator.
not to exceed 12 inches.
Yeah, we also had, and again, Ms. Castro's not here, I'm not, maybe, I can't, but I can look back and see what we did on first reading, but I know that I'm looking at a draft that we worked on at a staff level in mid-April, and it allowed for fill contained within a stem wall foundation,
Yeah,
and it also allowed for, like the mayor said, first 12 inches of fill.
yeah,
So
I remember that too.
this version in your packet of this ordinance makes me nervous.
We certainly can't have a second reading of an ordinance that's not in the thing. So, I mean, if we get it right, we table it. Adrian, we're gonna table that too. Is this the ordinance you were given?
It's the most recent one, I probably got 20 drafts of it.
Okay. All right.
Everything else.
So, everybody, we're in the room and at the table. All right, moving on, 5.
Ordinance 688 is the beach vending ordinance. We need to decide how to proceed with the ordinance. Specifically, where it talks about permissible locations, it's page 54 of your packet. Number 2, we don't have any beach businesses open to operate in front of. Jenny said Nick would have something more detail.
Sure. We also have construction projects ongoing that make beach vending businesses complicated, but I think Ms. Castro is looking for some guidance from you, whether we were going to just have no beach vending for the immediate future, or you might want to reconsider that rule. I think that our primary local beach vendor is interested in operating somewhere. Right now, there aren't really any sites that meet this rule. Could be another year or two before there are. So it's just an open conversation for you whether to leave things as is and we wouldn't have beach vending in the immediate future, or whether you'd want to entertain doing something different.
We currently don't have any beach vending applications pending, but I expect to meet.
There may be one comment, according to our attorneys that are handling the litigation.
Yeah, all right. I have a tendency not to be in favor of someone that's suing me personally. However, I think we need to have the beach vendors because we're beginning to have people on the beach. And it's gonna be a long time before this one particular beach vendor can set up behind the El Governor. You know, it's gonna be like a year from now. So I'm not opposed to allowing beach vendors to operate, especially the ones that were operating before the storm. They've got employees that work for them and all that. Plus, I think some of the visitors here could enjoy that items that they represent. So I'm not opposed to it.
Where are they gonna operate?
Well, what we'd probably do is modify the portion of the ordinance that requires the upland business to be open and operational, and just.
Well, there may be reasons, for instance, where the old governor, I don't know what's going on the beach side, where there's much construction and whatever, then we may have to restrict areas. But there should be enough room on the beach that the vendors could operate.
What we want to consider is, the way it was written, is that there had to be a restaurant, hotel, or bar operational. So at this point, I don't think any are.
No.
So then you open up the door, well, if you don't need a functioning, operating hotel, restaurant, bar, well then is any commercial property good enough, or do we just tie it to where prior ones were?
Where they used
Which
to
would
be.
be, that'd be the driftwood.
Just wherever they could, yeah, if it's
one or two
convenient,
others.
yeah.
I don't think we should limit it to just the person who was in business before,
No.
because there's no business to tie into. So I would think that if we're giving it the okay for one, then it's open to anybody who wants to request a permit.
Well, we
And
don't-
I don't think that we should deny anybody who wants a permit.
I don't think we need 30 different
Well,
companies on the beach.
well,
We have rules built in already for, it's really up to the upland owner.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're-
the upland
they're gonna
owner,
sign it.
it just,
I don't think it should be anywhere near El Governor or the road down to the beach. I don't think that should be used, because that's right next to El Governor. I think it's too dangerous, safety factor.
well, remember our
Sunset-
rules now, we're tied to the upland owner agreeing to it. The upland owner of the commercial
Right, but
property
you
has
don't-
to agree to it.
Right, I agree with you there, but we don't want something where there's construction near
Well,
there.
but
or
the
anything.
upland owner wouldn't, if they don't want them there, they won't agree to it.
Just other background, we may be looking more at the Driftwood site than the El Governor site. It's unclear because we don't have any applications in-house, but there's some indication to that.
I'm for making it simple. What we had before applied to existing, I believe it's bars, motels, restaurants, taverns, or whatever, and we knew there was only 5 of those when we first started this. There's only 5 of those potential locations.
And there's none now.
And there's none now. So the fact that they're gone, just leave them,
Just not allow it. Is that what you're saying?
no, let them,
Well, no, I
be tied to those locations, just like they were pre-Michael. The same, there was the Driftwood, the Old Governor, the Guff, I can't even remember.
But there's
Michael
nothing,
Kent's.
but there's
Few
nothing
motels,
there.
2 cans.
Well, of course there's nothing there, Linda, there's a hurricane, and it's all gone.
You're right.
So, but I'm saying, let's pretend they are there, and they can, that's where they can vend again if the upland owner allows it. That's, to me,
I mean,
the
even
simplest.
toucans could allow.
Yeah, toucan.
Who knows when they're gonna be
That's
rebuilt?
right, that's right, there was two cans of the Michael Kent Motel, that's embarrassing, I can't even think of the name.
Buena
of it.
Vista.
Thank you,
What was it?
Bona Vista, or Bona Vista.
Yeah, I like the idea of us trying to keep it
And that's
simple.
where, that's
Are
where.
we gonna allow chairs to be brought down there, the wooden chairs? I thought they were out.
They're banned.
There's no chair, that went away in 18 or what?
Right.
That went away September 30th. It'd be jet skis, it might be plastic chairs.
All right,
We're gonna ride up and down the beach?
no, there's limitations on
And how-
that too,
No,
just like it was before.
yeah, it says,
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
but,
the new.
Here's the info.
So, okay, so that's an interesting, good conversation. What we need to do is, we need to revise the ordinance we have, if that's the inclination of the council. Is there enough support for that, that us to go ahead and write that up and do a first reading next meeting?
Yeah, we're just talking about number 2, right? And that's the only thing you won't change,
Right.
is the location where it says you must have there must be a building there.
Well, it's a simple change.
Yeah, it's a very simple.
I just would want to amend the ordinance in order to allow folks to operate, rather than just.
So you have to have a motion for that?
No.
Okay,
We can bring an ordinance back to first reading.
good.
okay, help me out. Clarify this for me. So if we change it, the wooden chairs are out,
Yeah,
okay. How would they, in the jet skis, how would they get the jet skis down without going right next to a major construction area? I think that's a lawsuit for the city. I mean, it's a major construction with El Governor. How are they gonna get that from 98 down there?
They would need to show in their application that there's some safe way to do it, and that site.
And
might
the
not be
owner
safe.
would have to agree, the owner of the property.
We
And
said-
most of the time, the construction company is going to have a line, or they're gonna have a fence or some way to keep people out of danger.
We can't even plant COs because of birds and everything. We don't, I mean, we said there's all these people here. I went out on the beach and I could look 300 yards each way on Saturday. I saw nobody. So tell me where all these people are. and
Most of
where-
them right now are in Gulf County.
That's because they got a place to park.
Well, that's true. But,
I mean,
Let's please don't restrict a business that might want to try.
Well, I don't think it should be just one business then, if we're gonna open it up.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
if we get 20 applications, then we'll deal with that, but, I mean, we've been here, got one that's been doing it 20 years, never had another one. I'm just saying, at least give them an opportunity.
We
to
did
open
have
up.
one, we did have one apply
Okay,
and was
well,
denied,
if-
so.
If they come back and wanna put in an application, we can look at it. I'm just saying, let's don't,
they should get a
let's don't
permit.
keep them out automatically.
Do we
That's
wanna-
twice I agree with the mayor.
Should we also add something in their application, have to show that it'll be, that a safe way to.
Well,
use
that's
it
part of,
outside?
that's part of the application.
It's been implied, I don't know if it's,
Well,
I don't think, I
it
don't know if we
says-
used it
says-
before.
I mean,
We're
come
trying to
on,
make it
let's keep
simple.
rolling. Let's keep it, just a guy, anybody that's trying to do business, surely we want to try to accommodate that. Surely we wanna do that.
Question.
Question there.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
The city is going to have, in the next coming months, which will cover the summer season, they're going to be hauling sand, from east to west to put up the dunes. There's going to be construction on Highway 98 there on the dedicated beach, and I don't know where else on Highway 98. What is the city's liability for people playing down there on the beach with all of these major construction projects? And do the residents who own the properties all along 98 have liability issues with people just crossing over all of this open property? What is the city's liability, and do residents have to worry about liability? You're encouraging people to come down here in the midst of major construction, so what is the liability to all of these people?
Kind of like Rex said, I'll tell you the truth, I don't think we're gonna be bothered with that many people coming here. I just think there's gotta be some way to make this reasonable.
I'm not talking about that particularly, but if you've got people who are crossing private property to get to the beach and city property where major construction and heavy equipment is going on, what are the liabilities when you've got anybody down there? Because that's city-owned property, which makes all of us liable.
I hate to try to speak for Ms. Castro, but I think the answer would be where the projects are ongoing and there's active construction. I think those portions of the beach are to be closed temporarily.
Yes, but
Construction site, just like if it wasn't on the beach and it was, you know, I mean,
Where isn't there construction?
well, but
There's not a
you
place.
don't just shut your city down. You don't just shut your beach down.
But we try to act normal, we're not anywhere close to
Well,
normal.
we need to act normal.
Well, we're not,
No.
we're
Well,
not.
we need to act that way. We need to
Yeah.
have
We need to
much
think.
You
normalcy.
can't pretend.
Dina, do you have any comments about, we'll definitely have some big construction projects, but the idea, are we gonna have construction on the entire beach going on, or is it gonna be in certain
It
areas?
should only be in certain areas, I mean, as we get past with, I mean, the emergency dune will cover the entire length of the beach, but it won't all be constructed at one time. So I think my understanding is where they're actively working, that section will be closed off. After they've moved past that section and it's safe, they'll open that piece back up. Obviously, we'll have the dunes roped off so that you're not walking across them, but that's why we're trying to.
And there's road gaps, street end gaps at each, just like it. just
There
like-
are gaps.
That's right, the gaps between the dunes.
And do you have any comments about, we're potentially gonna have some ATVs going over those areas to bring items back and forth from the vending areas? Is the emergency dune built in a way to accommodate things like that?
The emergency berm has, every so many feet, it has an opening where you can cross it without going over the dune itself.
So where are we talking about accessing the beach? Anywhere on the beach?
pretty much the way it was before, right?
Well, we're trying to do the first 5 dune walkovers kind of in conjunction on the dedicated beach. So there'll be 5 specific areas that you can access the beach through the dune walkovers. Everywhere else, where like the west end of town, yeah, at
But
the
we're
end of
not
all the
saying the
streets.
vendor can cross it any walkover.
That's not what we're, the staff, that's not what we're saying.
No, but we just follow what's already in our ordinance, which has restrictions on where the vendor goes.
Yeah, and we'll have to, as things move along over time, we'll have to restrict different areas. But we're opening up other areas. I mean, I don't know that we're going to have everybody up and down the beach.
Where we said 2 camps, where's the access point at 2 camps?
386.
Who owns that?
Well, the city owns some property there.
I mean, are they gonna access through the city's property? How they gonna get there? How, if they give them permission? We just gonna let them access anywhere they can get
Part of
down?
the application, and you look at it and you decide, and then do the application, you look at it, and part of that is we gave the administrator the responsibility to review the applications, see how they're gonna operate, what's gonna be involved, and, I mean, if we wanna take that away now and make sure that this table reviews that, that's okay, but that's the way it's set up. All of that is part of the application process.
Our current rule, nobody's talked about changing it yet, is ATVs may only be operated within the permitted area, so that's the area permitted in the application approval. And directly to and from the beach access approved in the permit holder's application, ATVs shall only be allowed within the permitted area before 7 AM and after 7 PM. So it's fairly limited.
I'm all for all the businesses to come back. But we don't, my feeling is we don't have that many people on the beach that are gonna require or really want these things. Most people, the few people that are on the beach are bringing their own chairs and umbrellas. I'm wondering if we're just rushing too much for this little bit. Wait until we get the beach cleaned up, the dunes up, some dune walks on there so we know what's going on there, so we don't have to constantly tell any vendor, nope, you can't be in this area, you have to move your business to this area.
Dina, how long is this going to take to do the beach area like we're talking about here? I mean, we've got to bring the sand in, DOT's got all that to do, then we've got some more to do in a certain area of the beach. I don't know if it would be safer, it'd be safer to just eliminate any business on the beach, but, that's pretty tough.
Not permanently, just right now.
Well,
Yeah, not permanently.
well, you know, El Governor is gonna be a year from this month, they say, before they'll be opening it. And I think to give somebody a permit to be a beach vendor, then we can determine exactly where they can be a beach vendor and where they can't for their own safety. Most of the time, the construction people are going to have the mark off anyway. But I don't know that there's gonna be a lot of business there, but, I'm for letting them make an effort.
I agree, I'm for letting them make an effort, I'm letting the permit process work itself out. And so many of these questions will be answered at that time that it's filled out. And if it's a location that they can operate, and they stay there 2 weeks and nobody shows up, well then they'll leave. Or if they're there just on Saturday, I don't know, I don't have a clue. But if we tell them, here's some of the restrictions you have to deal with, then that's what they'll deal with.
And if they don't deal with the restrictions, then we say you can't operate here then. I mean, we'll have to be real careful with the restrictions that are enforced to make sure everybody's safe.
They have to be enforced.
That's what I said.
That's half the problem.
That's what I said. Enforced.
You forgotten who our administrator is? Said, have you forgotten who our administrator is?
No, but she's enjoying herself with the governor the next few days.
That's good.
Congratulations, Tanya.
Okay, Nick, I don't know, you got what you need? I don't even know, we kicked that can
You've
around.
kinda gone around and around and around.
You got what you need?
I'm just gonna adjust the portion.
Yeah, it says that, and then it doesn't say that anymore. And then when they rebuild, I guess we can go back and check it.
Sure.
And it goes back to the administrator to make some of these decisions?
But it's still a permit application. We have a lot of rules in here. Obviously, we have sections of the beach closed for construction, we're gonna have to shut down the vendor for temporarily in those areas.
Fine.
We'll just add it as a condition of the permit, but it's common sense. If there's a chunk of beach closed because there's bulldozers.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
All right, what's, number 6?
I'm prepared for this one. All right, remember, we previously approved that we were going to sift out and clean from the beach to the second sandbar all the debris. They have since done sonar and determined there is very little debris between the beach and the second sandbar. So staff is recommending we scrap that project and not do it. There is, however, a significant amount of debris beyond the second sandbar. But that was never in our scope, so we couldn't do it anyway. So staff wants to scrap the project and not do it because of the insignificant amount of debris between the beach and the second sandbar.
How deep is it?
So that's just notification?
Yeah,
That's-
just
that's the
updating on where we were on that.
Okay, gotcha. Questions on beach to second sandbar.
But there's a lot of debris past that, you're saying, that could potentially one day move in.
Would it be dangerous to boats now?
Everything.
Right now, there's nothing out there that's causing any harm or to navigation. I mean,
Is-
what I mean by that is there's no pilot sticking up, there's no
Oh.
roof sticking up that's gonna, a boat would.
Is there anything, maybe we can find some of our furniture.
Anything leaky or anything?
Not that we've seen anyway.
All right, we're moving on. We're moving on.
Yeah,
Third call.
yes.
All right, number 7, after me. In your packet, you have, some information concerning 1003 Cypress Lane. When I looked at this, I feel like, for me personally, I just think that this is, that this council needs to address, or at least be aware of what is being, the information that's been supplied to the owner of that property. And I put it on here so that he would have an opportunity to discuss the decision that he's been given from this city, because I think it merits our attention to that.
So this is about one specific piece of property and
Yeah.
one owner?
Page 59.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one
Start
property,
with
one
59.
owner. I'm gonna let Zach give his spiel, cause I think it merits that.
Thank you, guys. I don't know what's in the packet. I didn't know anything was gonna be presented. I own this property right here. It's no doubt not the nicest house in Mexico Beach. It's been here 40 years. I pay taxes as a little house. I pay a fire assessment as a little house. I figured after the Hurricane Shirley, it was gone. Somehow had very little damage. I've got a substantial damage letter from Ms. Tanya saying no substantial damage. Missing some shingles on the roof and a volunteer group target for my renters. So I've got some people interested in buying it, or I would like to fix it up. And they said, Mrs. Castro said, well, we really just want this to go away. This doesn't meet, what we're looking for in the city. I said, surely that's wrong. The second one told me that. I finally got a meeting with Mrs. Castro. They would like this property, my house, to just go away. Seems to be the feelings of staff. I would like to be able to fix my house. So I asked if I could present to council, was told no, I don't have a variance, and I went to see Mr. Allen and asked if he could get me to talk to you guys.
Well, this isn't a permanent structure, right? This is
It's
a
been there
trailer.
40 years.
Okay, but it's a trailer.
It's an RV with a home built around it.
And in our LDR, does that qualify, being that it's a trailer? Now, I know that there's a screened-in porch and there's a little enclosed area for somebody to live in. But if the basis is a trailer in the LDR, if it's not a structure, don't we say we can't refurbish unless it's a permanent structure?
That's Ms. Cass' part of her argument. She says that she doesn't consider it a structure. 3 contractors I've talked to, it doesn't meet 2019 Florida Building Code. Everybody I've talked to says as long as you're under 50%, you're allowed to repair your structure. Well, I got a letter stating under 50%, no substantial damage.
What are you gonna repair? Are you adding on, or?
No, I understand I can't add on, I just need to fix the roof.
That's all he's asking for, is to repair the roof.
Nothing in
You're
it?
not
It's the roof.
asking to put an
It's a
accessory building?
non-conforming structure, so I
Well,
could never,
they're asking for that.
Yeah, they're
That's being
asking.
denied because they're saying it's not a structure.
Right, so they are asking for something more than just the roof. They're
Well, if
asking
it's
for
a
another
structure, then
building.
they could,
Ms. Kessler said you couldn't put a shed, there's a shed there, they want to replace a shed. But if you don't have a structure, you're not allowed to have a shed. That's a second issue. If you tell me I can't put a shed at the house, that's fine. I'd really like to repair the roof. But the second request was they would like to replace the shed that's there.
So is the issue that the building department will not issue a permit for the roof because they say they can only issue permits for Florida Building Code compliant structures?
The issue is staff feels it's not an actual structure, therefore it cannot be repaired.
Well, it is pretty pathetic looking, but we have mobile homes around town that are damaged beyond repair, and they can't have them back again. But the ones that are damaged and can be repaired, I don't see much difference in that and this. I mean, like he says, it's been here forever. and we've changed our mind in the last 40 years about what's okay and what's not. But, it didn't look real good before the storm, it doesn't look much better now, but I don't see how we can stop him from repairing the roof and continuing on. I don't.
What did the building department say? I mean, isn't that for them to decide? What did Bo Creel say?
It says in here that Bo Creel said that it doesn't meet the criteria for structure. Well, here's the problem with that, in my opinion, that we as a city council, well, it was a structure on October the 9th.
But it's got lights on it.
It's got, I mean, you know, excuse me, excuse me. Know nothing about that? I mean, that was.
Someone said something about Wallace. Was it a fire call or something?
No, not yet anyway.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah, let's just take a 30-second break, long enough to read, see what's the tax. Did you hear any of that?
Wallace. I don't know who Wallace is.
Oh. Like Wallace Pump, Wallace. Okay. Fire, was it a fire pump?
Must have been because of
Or,
fire.
or,
See, heard
I
of
hope it's
something.
not your place.
about structure roll.
It's your place, Wallace.
Structure
Yeah.
roll, that's what I heard.
But,
A structure roll.
all right, we won't, I mean, let's slow down, just when you, everybody leaves like that, and so, thanks. All right, back to, we'll continue on, my contention is that how can on October 9th, it be a structure, have water, it has water, it has sewer, it has power, it's paid a fire assessment, it has a parcel ID, it has a taxable value, and on October the 11th, after the hurricane goes through, it's not a structure, and all it needs is some work on the roof. I had much rather us try to find a way to help than I had say just, well, it's not really destroyed. We sent him a structural assessment and just, no, you can't fix the roof, so just move it out of town. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And I think if we said that it is a structure, if we said that we understand, we looking at this and saying, hey, let's put it back in service, that's all he needs, he's not adding on, he's not changing anything, but just repairing the roof.
But it says too, as well as add an accessory structure. It doesn't say anything about.
Well, that's to put a shed. I think what he talked to her about was to put a shed on the property, it had a shed before. But the
And
shed
storm
part is
took care of
being
that.
denied because he's saying it's not a structure.
But, okay, and I
If I
have
can
trouble.
fix the roof, I can put a shed, she's saying, but you can't fix the roof because it's not a structure.
Well, I have trouble, I mean, you got Bo Creel in a building department that was supposed to know what in the world they're doing, and I don't know why it even is here.
Well, and I respect you, Mayor, but if both Creel and the building department, if we don't really care what they say, then why are we paying them? Why not get rid of the building department?
Well, why was it okay to be there on October the 9th?
Why was my home there okay? The hurricane, nature.
Well, but it was okay for it to be a structure then.
let me tell you, I tried to get a little something done on my property, 204 square feet, cost me $75 to get the engineer to look at it, and they denied it. Well, 5 years ago, that'd probably been okay. So, I'll say this for Bo Creel, they're being much stricter now than they've ever been. And,
Was that what we want?
well,
Is that what this city wants?
well, that's what we're paying for. I mean,
Well, I don't want that.
When you say accessory structure though, are you talking about a 10 by 10? What
Yeah,
defines
a shed.
it?
If we wanna pull the shed, I'll pull the shed. There was just a shed there, they wanna replace the shed that was there, but if we wanna scratch a
Roll-off
shed,
shed.
I think probably, well,
we wanna scratch a shed, I'll take that, I didn't even know that part of, I don't know what's in your piece of paper. You know, I had a meeting with Ms. Castro, she said it was into the road, and that's.
I think we're trying to find a way to not allow it. I'd like to see us find a way to allow it.
I'm not opposed to that. You know, it's ugly as hell, but I think it's not 50% destroyed. All he needs to do is put a new roof on it. I'm all for him doing that. And I don't care if he adds a 10 by 10 shed, because, I mean, what's the difference in that and a mobile home that's been sitting there for 20 years, and one has a tree fall over it? Well, it's non-repairable. The other one has a window broken out. Well, or a roof that needs a one-end fix, they just fix it, and they're still there.
Well,
It's
that's
the
the
same
argument
thing.
here.
But
He's
why
got
are
a
we hiring, why are we paying we hired a building committee, we hired, and I agree, Bo Creel has stepped up tremendously.
Oh, I'll say, yeah.
And so we complained because he was lackadaisical, and now that he's getting stricter, I hear complaints that he's too strict, but he's following the
I believe Bo
rules.
Creel would permit the roof of a pole barn, is essentially, but, I mean, there's a lot of technical issues here. Staff doesn't feel it's a house, so there's ways to get a roof permit.
Well,
If I were gonna buy it, I'd put an accessory structure and move into the accessory structure.
I will say this, because what I wanted to do was add a little shed on the side of my existing house, but I had to get an engineer to come back and redesign it so that the uplift would not take the roof off.
Any shed would have to be permitted through the
But,
building department,
you
of
know,
course.
and if you look at this, of course, I mean, he went through, what, 100 and something mile an hour winds, but it doesn't look like it would withstand a 75 mile an hour wind, and it did. So, I think if we're allowing mobile homes to be repaired, then we should allow this to be repaired.
Well, here's the question. This is an RV. A mobile home is at least, a mobile home is considered a home, this is an RV. So if you allow this RV to stay and stay a residence, then you open the door for other RVs to come in, and they can put an outdoor shed, a little roof over it, and boom, you got an RV. So it doesn't matter.
This was existing way before.
It's been there since 1975. I don't wanna touch the RV, I wanna put a roof on the pole.
But you're still opening the door to allow RVs to be used as residences.
I think everyone that was here since 1975 will have a pretty good argument, but that's irrelevant. Somebody put one in 2019.
I don't care what it
Yes.
looks like. I don't.
On the property appraisal,
It's a
does
house.
it show a property appraisal on
Yeah, assessed as a house, has been for about 40 years,
a, so you've been
1975.
paying property appraisal?
I pay a property tax, I pay a current water bill, I pay a current power bill. It's assessed as a manufactured mobile
Okay.
All right,
That kind of,
We're good.
have a city vehicle roll over, everybody's good.
I don't care what it looks like, if Bo Creel would give the approval for the repairing the roof, I
I
don't
think Bo
know.
Creel is being led by the city.
No, I'm not so sure about that.
The building department tells me that's the case.
I'm not
Staff
sure.
has indicated they
Okay,
don't
so,
want it.
Well, I'd just like to input one little thing, you know, we've had a big meetings and stuff, and we grandfather a lot of people in and allow them to build structures back on non-conforming stuff. It's basically the same thing. I mean, the man is wanting to keep what was there. I mean, why not? I mean, I know what you're saying about Bo, about this thing, but this is different than that. It's
I
been
think
brought
the
to the
city should
council.
support him, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. The city, in this case, the city should support putting back what was there. That's all, and
Just fix it.
Right,
that's all, okay.
Well, I came to the meeting, I drove by and looked at this before the meeting, and I saw the tarp, but gee, I mean, I was surprised, because I was expecting it to be 50% damage or whatever, or more, but it's not. Now, as far as allowing this to happen in the future, I don't know that I can vote for it to happen in the future. If somebody wants to bring an RV into town, I'm gonna vote against doing that. But this is an existing situation, that's been existing for years. And most of the time I have a tendency to agree with Tanya, but I disagree on this. Fix the roof and continue
Continue
on.
on, I agree.
That's 3 times the mayor and I have agreed. That's pretty
Now
hard to
we
believe.
know we're going to.
So apply for the permit, see what happens. Maybe-
Well, it's up to staff right now. I've talked to the building department, and they said, I'm stopped at staff level right now. So my option there was to come to get a city council decision.
Well, I can say that, is it, Jerry summed it up, is that, I mean, is there anything wrong?
No, get a permit for the roof and
Move
get
on.
on the way.
Yeah, that's what I see. What's the matter, Rex? Okay.
Okay. All right, well then I will the minutes will reflect, and I will let Tanya know that we discussed it, and that's what I will do about it.
For roof only, not the accessory, right?
Fine.
Do what?
Take the accessory out of there.
Well, you don't need to take it out, just to take it out. If you get a structure, you're allowed to put a dang shed on it.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're
I
allowed to
agree.
do that.
What's the difference? I mean,
You don't just take it out to say, that's appease
Well,
somebody, you're entitled, if it was there before.
well, you got what you wanted.
All right, let's,
You
we'll,
don't
we'll,
wanna-
we'll,
you don't wanna
we'll
push
move
it,
on.
do you?
Need a roof. Thank you,
All
guys.
right, we ready, moving on?
Oh,
Okay, 9. 8, excuse me.
oh, you trying to, okay.
No, I'm not skipping anything.
Oh,
8.
okay, all right. Civic Center, I'm still concerned, and I didn't mention this at the last meeting. I did mention my concern, and the reason I didn't say the city could be liable if somebody gets hurt on that property while they're doing business with Kathy Construction or whatever. Because there are people who would go out there and fall and say they hurt themselves. So I didn't want to bring that up. But now, in talking with some attorney friends of mine, one of them I didn't think could get out of high school, but he wound up making an attorney. He totally agreed that we, as a city, are in line, could be liable for a lawsuit over this. And I'm concerned about that. I'm not concerned about them using the property. If they wanted to rent the property, if they wanted to buy the property, I frankly feel like the city should sell the property. But nobody seemed to be bothered by that last week.
Yeah, I
Well, I
mean,
wasn't there,
I
so.
was bothered by it, I was waiting for a response. Yeah. It would be like me owning property and somebody just coming in and using the property. I don't even think if you asked to use it, you could be allowed to use it. It's just, at best, I just think it was the wrong thing to do.
Well, I just think it's wrong. It's not somebody's property, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the mayor, I don't care if it's the mayor's son. We are all equal. And what I can do and what the mayor can do is the same thing with what Rex can do. It doesn't matter where you are on the pecking line. But if they want to rent it, and it's just not where the Civic Center building was, it is the entire parking lot, the entire lot. If they wanna rent it, that's fine. Or if they wanna buy it, but I don't think that anybody, and again, it doesn't matter who it is, I don't think anybody should have the right to just put their things down without even letting the council know that they're doing this. It just is, it was like, okay, well, we have this space, I'm using it. I just don't think it's wrong.
Could we even give permission in this case? I mean, what are the problems with doing that?
It's complicated, and it would depend on what kind of arrangement's set up. If it's just kind of informal, allowing it to stay there, maybe. I want to talk to the commission on ethics on how to set that up and if that works. But we can't have a formal lease with the hardware store, and the reason why is there's a rule. It may not even be what anyone would expect. The mayor doesn't work there, he doesn't own the hardware store, that's what he's explained to me. But there is an ethics rule that says, that, none of you could, hold any employment or contractual relationship with any business or any agency which is doing business with the city. So if we created a situation where the hardware store is doing business with the city, I don't know that it already is, but if we established that, if we had a real lease with indemnifications and insurance and a term, if we did that, in that case, well, the mayor's the landlord, so he'd have a contractual relationship with the hardware store, which would then be doing business with the city. I don't think we have any issues right now, but that's the drawback about trying to formalize things and adding a rent clause and indemnifications, and so that doesn't really work. If we were gonna leave it just informal, leave it alone the way it is, that may work. And like I said, I wanna call the state agency and just kind of talk through it with them and make sure we do it the right way.
I'm still concerned about, you might find out if, my first concern is the city being liable if someone gets hurt on that property.
It's possible.
I mean, that's what we're all here for, to protect the city, so to speak.
Well, if it's possible, I mean, it's not good. I mean, I've heard you could, if you have a hole in your yard, and you walk across and break your leg, I'm in trouble.
The bottom line is the question about the ethics rules, they're secondary. What do you want to do with the property?
Sell it.
I'd like to sell it.
Yeah.
I don't think the city needs it. I mean, we've all talked about a city center sooner or later involved in the 25 or 20 many acres we're gonna receive from the St. Joe Company, and I think that's a great, a good idea. But, we don't need the property. We could use the money more than we need the property. And then that would take care of everything. But someone mentioned to me that, and this is kind of confusing. Could we sell it to Kathy Hardware? Is there a problem, the relationship the city has with Kathy Hardware, or is it just as good as if it was somebody else? I mean,
I think we need to do a competitive process to make sure that.
Competitive?
We have.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we would,
the highest value, and
yeah.
I think it's okay.
Okay, oh, good, okay.
I'll confirm that, but I think as long as it's a competitive process where everyone has an opportunity to bid on
Okay,
the
let's
project.
say this. Let's say somebody wanders out through there and falls and hurts themselves and turns around to sue us. Then we sue the people that are using the property?
We could.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Would we win?
That simplifies things a great deal.
I would say, like most lawsuits, everybody will lose.
Yeah. No, the lawyers have a tendency, the lawyers have a tendency to win.
The thing I would like to ask, and I wish he was here, is what thought process did he go through? Did he, it's just kind of rubbed you the wrong way that somebody just said, oh, here's some
I'll tell
money.
you, I don't mind doing that.
Okay.
The business center had 8 businesses in it. There's 3 of them left. And literally left. 2 are crippled. 1 is working out of a food tent and a food truck, and the other is a hardware store working out of a supply warehouse. And you're dealing with an owner there that lost his home, lost his business. And when he got his feet under him to make a decision about how he was gonna continue his livelihood, he simply was overwhelmed by what was going on in the city as far as the hardware business. And it's still overwhelmed. That was a parking lot. People parked there.
Some of it, yes.
Well, except where the building was torn down.
All right.
The rest of that was parking. It's recognized as the business center. It was common parking. There was only 2 businesses operating. It was sitting there. I'm not gonna speculate on, I think it was a path of least resistance at the time. Don't know that it was ever intended to just become forever, as some have, I think Gary mentioned at the last meeting, it just, but I don't know, I think what was in his mind is like what's in the few business people that are still here. How do you make payroll? How do you pay for the insurance? How do you find employees? And as a parking lot with no other businesses, I think it was just a convenience thing more than anything else.
You know, I think the one thing that irritates some of us is the fact all they had to do would have helped a great deal if they just come to the meeting and said, hey, just what you just said, it makes a lot of sense.
But on the backside of that, I want to continue, on the backside of that, if this city, throughout its history, if there was a need, the business community has been at the front, they would be lined up at the front door of that city, of this building. I'm not defending whether or not who should have asked what, but the presentation that was made at the last meeting was rather pointed. And I think that in terms of recognizing the conditions that we're all living in and trying to survive in, it's easy, I think, to say if all you're looking at, he didn't do it right. I can't, there's no defense for that. But let's at least have some courtesy of, instead of thinking that he did it wrong, what can we do, what do you want done? Remember, it was a parking lot. Joe Smith can park out there and walk across that parking lot and fall down.
And I had a person.
It was common parking to the entire business center. This practically doesn't exist now.
This guy said I could bring my dozer out there and park it. I said, I don't know that we would appreciate that, you know, because there is a parking lot, but there is a city-owned parcel of land. And, I just think something needs to be done to make everybody, and I hear what you're saying.
I'm fine, why don't you just tell him what you want done with it? I mean, if you.
I'd like to sell it.
Well, I know, but what do you want done? I mean, if you want something moved, or you wanna fence it off or rope it off, is that what you wanna do?
No, I'm not opposed to him using the property, because who else around there is using the property? There's no reason. You know, number one, I didn't appreciate the position he took to just take it over like it belonged to him, because it doesn't belong to him. Number two, now, yeah, I'm saying that's just not quite right, kinda like Rex did. It's just not, if it'd been anybody else taking over that property, whether they were next door or, you know, lived in another state and they came in there and parked stuff, we'd be all up in the air about that, and rightfully so. It's a different situation, I understand. And I'm not opposed to helping, because you all are hurting for space, and you've gotta have inventory because everybody needs what you're selling. And, you know, I'm not trying to shut down business, because that might mean that you're not handling as much inventory as the rest of the city and the people around here need. But, I mean, you agree that you didn't think it was quite handled right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes a big difference to me, that you agree with that. But, and if, my only other concern is that we don't get tied in to somebody getting hurt and so, is the likelihood of that 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000? I don't know. But I'd like to have this fixed some way that the city is not obligated for any injury on that property. And I think you can understand that, can't you?
Sure.
Well,
Let the cities.
okay, that's all.
But it's our property. From the city side, I mean, it's no different than any other, quote, city property that we own.
Right.
But other people aren't consuming their own goods on the, I mean, if we took like Seventh Street Park, under the palms, yeah, somebody can get hurt there, but it's not loaded with personal items of somebody else who's, there's a lot of traffic.
That's my concern is a liability concern. We are aware.
Well, Nick may can answer that.
That's there. We're aware of it. Somebody in the forklift turns over and kills somebody, then who's responsible for that?
Whoever gets sued, and the owner
There
is
you
always
go.
a party that.
Spoken like a true attorney.
Well, the owner is always a party that can be liable, and.
I mean, it's a problem, isn't it?
It is a problem.
That's
Yeah,
not,
There are no absolutes, someone has to
If we
establish
chart-
their lawsuit, the liability, but that is a normal first level target people look to as property.
Okay, so if they paid rent for that property, would the chances of the city getting sued be lessened if they paid rent?
Not really,
Okay.
that situation just means that we would require the hardware store to indemnify the city to cover the liability, but what I was explaining before is if we set up something that formal, I think we do have an issue under chapter 112 of the ethics code about conflicts of interest. I don't know that I don't think we can do that. What we have now that's very informal might be okay. The more we turn it into a real lease scenario, it won't work.
It would have been nice, and this is hindsight, after it was brought up at the last meeting, it would have been nice if Lee would have come to the meeting today and said, I know this is on the agenda, let me tell you,
I think he would have done that.
let
if he
me tell
listened
you
to the meeting.
how, what my thought process was, the same as you said. But it would have been nice if he came himself and said, this is what I'm thinking, what can I do to help alleviate this concern? But-
The only thing I
So what
thought,
are our choices?
and
Nothing.
Nick hadn't helped out a whole lot so far. What do you do?
my only concern was
Do
that
you
we,
want the materials taken off the property or not?
Is it a liability?
well, you just said, yeah,
Yeah,
if somebody gets hurt.
yeah.
Well, there's a liability if somebody gets hurt on Kathy's property. And so they've got insurance to cover that, I'm sure. So, I would just like the liability to go away from the city responsibility. How do we do that? We can't rent it to them. We
As
can
long
rent
as you
it.
own it, as long as we, the city, own it, you're involved in a potential liability, it's no different than anything else.
Well, I'd rather not own it, to tell you the truth. I don't see any
Something
point.
to think
I
about
make a
selling
motion
it.
to sell it.
You make a motion to sell it, okay.
Second, it's not
Yeah.
Put it on the next
For the
meeting.
agenda for the next meeting.
Well, that's fine with me, you know, but, well, we decided absolutely nothing.
No, but everybody knows our thoughts and it's not fair. My feeling, it's not fair. We're all equal.
Well, you know, and I'm one that
No,
brought this
you're
up the
not better
last
than I.
meeting. Well, no, but I don't see anybody around town that needs that property, insists on using that property, and it's very convenient to be used the way it is being used. And because of the storm and other things happening, and because half of their property had to be torn down and hauled away, my only concern right now is that we're not liable, and it could be a one in a zillion case, but we're still liable because it's on our property. The other thing is, I'd like to see us sell it down the road. My main concern initially was, what can we do to eliminate this situation completely? And the only way to completely eliminate that is for all that material on the city property to be removed. Now, could all the stuff on the city property be put on public parking? and eliminate any liability.
But the
But-
city
But the
owns
city
the
owns
parking
The
lot.
city owns the
itself.
public parking.
Yeah, so,
So there's no good, you know,
When you tore the hardware store down, is that usable? Is it being used for anything right now?
It's being used now,
I mean,
we're trying to get the concrete moved, we're trying to start, getting ready to start building a building.
I was thinking if you move the material all on your property and let customers park on there, then you eliminate that.
mhm.
If you, I don't know if you have room, I don't know.
Do you anticipate this being used forever? Or do you see
Oh,
a,
well, of course, man.
short term?
It's not our property, it's not leased property, yeah, he understands that, he didn't know, nobody, till last week, nobody said anything. I totally agree that the simple thing, refer to it as right thing, would have been to say, that would have, had he done that, that still wouldn't have fixed any of the issues that we're discussing today.
that's true.
It would have made feelings better, but it wouldn't have fixed.
I agree with that, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that shouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, at 38 years old, you don't ask dad anything, okay? So that's just, I mean,
So it doesn't sound like there's an interest or motion that says just remove the property now. It's not necessarily the material sitting there is a problem, it's liability issues, so I'll make a suggestion, why don't I call the commission on ethics tomorrow morning, I'll talk them through the issue, I'll emphasize the fact that we're dealing with the storm. See what kind of input I get.
Well, yeah, you know, things are not normal, half of their property was destroyed, so we understand that.
I mean, I researched their materials, this isn't a common thing, it's not in their materials, but maybe they'll have a more forgiving viewpoint.
Okay.
moving on.
Moving on.
All right, Adrian, 9,
I'm gonna do 9 and 10 together. They're more of an FYI. Number 9, we're getting ready to put out an RFP for signage. The bid will include blue signs for the entire city, except for Highway 98, they will be green, because they have to be on Highway 98. So that RFP is getting ready to go out. The other RFP getting ready to go out is vehicles. We wanna replace the vehicles that were lost to the storm using insurance proceeds. There is some quotes in here that we've received on police vehicles so far, but we're gonna go through the RFP process and get quotes for everything, and that's gonna go out as well.
okay?
One thing I'd like to see the city do is cover up these logos on the side of city vehicles that looks like they've been through 150 years of use. That just changes the whole appearance of the vehicle. I don't know how it costs, there's one on each side,
About $500 a vehicle.
huh?
About $500 a vehicle.
Okay.
There are better uses for money than that.
No,
Quit
I
worrying
think,
about the logo.
as most of you know, I used to be in the business in a city in Kentucky. And, that was one of the first things I did when I took over the sanitation department was update the looks of the vehicles, because that gives everybody coming through town a little different perspective of us as a city. And you may argue that point, but on this point, I know I'm absolutely correct.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Subconsciously,
All right,
I took enough psychology.
What else you got?
On to number 11,
Number 11.
Miss Dina.
Number 11, yeah, that's Dean.
I'm done.
Well,
All right, no, you're not done yet.
I got number 14.
All right, go ahead, Dean.
So number 11 is a change order for the 8th Street bores that Eleanor is working on where we're crossing under the channel instead of having those attached to the bridge. So they explained that when they called in to locate, there's actually a buried fiber that is in the way of where we wanted to put our bores, so we're shifting everything northward. And because we're shifting it northward, we're now under a retaining wall next to the condos, Paradise Shores, that are there. So to get under that, we have to continue kind of deep rather than coming up like our design showed. to get past that retaining wall. So essentially, both bores, we're having to add about 40 feet on both of them, so a total of 80 feet, to get past that retaining wall and then come up at an angle that the bore contractor says he feels safe entering the ground or coming out of the ground. So the gist of that is a change order in the amount of, $8,112 and 80 cents.
You don't have a choice, do you?
We don't have a choice. We looked at where else we could put it, but we have to stay outside the footprint of the bridge and its footings, and we're trying to avoid then the retaining wall immediately north of that, and we also have to maintain a distance between the sewer and the water line. So we're pretty tight on space.
We didn't know that at the time?
We did not know, when we call in design tickets for buried utilities, a lot of times they don't come out. So the fiber either wasn't there when we called in the design ticket, it may have been installed afterwards, or they didn't mark it. So no, it was not shown for the purposes of our design. I did talk to Atkins, and again, this project was FEMA reimbursable. So if the city approves the change order will be added to that project, and this is still FEMA reimbursable. So it should not be an issue with FEMA.
Yeah, let's do it.
When are they gonna do that?
They're mobilizing now. I think they've already got equipment out there, so it's in process.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion to approve the change order if council so desire.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Any opposition? Let the motion reflect, pass it forward. Dana, you're up.
What's the next one?
Dredging, the dredging.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Yeah, so this is a not to exceed increase for the dredge company. It is based on the actual amounts that they've encountered so far with the dredging project, but it also assumes an assumed volume north of the 98 bridge and the 8th Street Canal, which is actually underway. So they've asked us, based on just the volumes encountered and their unit price, this is what they're saying they're estimating that the total cost of the project will be. Right, oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we,
Give the background.
yeah, sorry about that. We had, we included the original task order in the packet, so this is the actual task order, the amended task order. It should be waiting on the
That's
page.
actually the mobilization task order, so it's a different cluster.
Completely
one.
different.
Yeah.
Essentially, you had the wrong task order. This is the task order we're trying to amend. It is the task order to perform the dredging, not mobilization, but actual dredging. So they'll be paid based on the volume that they actually dredge. So even though we're increasing their not to exceed to the 9.1 million, they will only be paid what they're actually encountering in the canal and dredging out. But this is what, based on the material they've encountered so far, south of the bridge, plus what we expect north of the bridge, this is the total estimated amount that they're coming up with.
FEMA reimbursable.
It is FEMA reimbursable. We're only on the hook for, we're on the hook for 5%, right?
I believe so. So the original task order with the not to exceed amount in it was $5 million. And what's occurred.
That was the original.
Yes.
There's more material dredged. Maybe they were expected to go above 5, I don't know, but the original 5 million is going to be exceeded.
Essentially, they are encountering, and probably some of it is the fact that they had to go back out and continue to dredge the mouth because we had weather conditions that kept depositing sand. So essentially, they're encountering more material than what was originally expected. And so we are paying based on the volume dredged.
So you're at, this is somewhat confusing to me, only probably, 5 million original. We're asking to go to 9.158,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed, almost
Yes.
twice the original.
And that is based on what we know, because we've been getting tickets for what they've done so far south of the bridge and at the mouth of the canal. So this includes the material they've already dredged.
This is Crowder Gulf,
This is Crowder Gulf.
they're a dredge company,
Yes,
professional dredge company.
yes.
How come back and want a double what you bid was.
Well, it's not that they're changing their bid amount, because remember, they bid based on unit price per cubic yard.
That's how they bid all the time, Dean.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, we didn't know exactly what the bottom of the canal looked like when we put it out for RFP. We did linear footage and based volumes on the assumed amount of material, based on where we could see it from the surface of the water. It looked like it was so deep, took that by the total linear footage that we knew that we wanted to have dredged. I do think some of what happened was at the mouth of the canal, it kept filling in. We had them go out and dredge that area multiple times before they got out to the second sandbar. But again, this is.
No, but we've been doing that for years with our dredge. We can't afford to pay them to do it.
So.
Where is our dredge?
I don't know.
Do you know anything about our dredge?
I think it needs some repairs before it's back operational. But again, this doesn't mean they're going to get 9.2 million. This is what they're saying based on the volume they've encountered so far that they estimate. But they will only get paid for what they actually dredge.
I also don't think that they bid 5 million, they just bid.
They bid a
Unit
unit price.
price. They did unit pricing, but they, professional dredge, I don't know,
So what if we don't do anything?
Well, if we don't do anything, then yeah, once they hit the 5 million, which they're close to, they'll stop dredging because we don't have a way to pay them for it.
Okay, so what's the situation once they stop dredging?
Right now, they have gotten to the Highway 98 bridge. They are currently dredging 8th Street Canal. But they have not gone past the bridge to get into the interior portions of the canal where, because the original scope takes them all the way back to behind Waterside.
Did you say 8th Street Canal?
Yes, they're doing 8th Street Canal right
Why
now.
are we dredging that?
We're dredging just a section, 900 feet of 8th Street Canal to try to get it back open so that we have good flow again and it's not backing up into the inside of the city with our stormwater.
We still here. Everybody good, just give us a short version, but give us a report.
Yes, sir.
Then hang on just a minute, let's just clarify what.
I'm hung up, sorry.
Where we at?
Dredging, but we want to report.
We just want to report on the exit and the crash.
Oh, that report. Our employee is fine. There's no visible injuries, but we've sent him to the hospital anyway to be checked out. The concern is that he doesn't remember anything. So make sure he didn't hit his head and cause some sort of injury there, or if there isn't some underlying issue. The truck doesn't seem total. Gonna need some body work, but all in all, we're okay.
No other vehicle involved?
No, sir. No, sir.
Put your decals on it, okay?
All right, Dean, look, I don't want this, I'm not trying to pick holes in, just.
But if we don't do it, then.
Well, and.
Yeah, well, no, we can't stop.
Yeah.
No, we can't stop.
And I
I'm
should've-
just saying that it's, I don't understand the 8th Street.
I missed it that
We can talk about 8th Street now, but I wanted to back up to the beach, because even though this looks like a lot, we are saving money on the fact that a lot of this dredged material out of the canal, out of the marina, we're gonna save because we're not paying the
Paying
current,
for the sand.
the beach sand.
I
yeah.
got you.
We're also saving on the haul out, because originally, if it wasn't clean, they were gonna have to haul that out, and that was a cost to haul it. We're not having to pay that cost. So there are some good points to it.
Okay, and I know there are many, sand is expensive, as we know. Had we been purchasing all of that, we would have,
And I think we've got, what,
we
20,
might have
how many cubic yards of sand
rolled
do we
people's
have?
eyes, some of that.
1,200.
We
Does
did.
that sound right?
No, that's,
It doesn't sound like it.
He can give you a dredge update with our dredge too.
All right, well, let's stay on this task right here. So we need, the request before us is the change order for the dredging task order amendment, not to exceed 9.158. Are there more questions? If not, Chair will entertain a motion. we coming about, we have a motion second, go ahead.
Okay, this is dredging, but I've had a lot of private owners ask me about where they stand as far as what to be dredged from their property, their docks and all. Where do we stand there?
Currently, we stand, as far as I know, it's not a FEMA reimbursable line item, so we can't. The city doesn't intend to dredge private slips, as far, that's the last word I heard.
So what does owners do?
I mean, honestly, I don't know.
But didn't we talk about that, when we got all finished with everything, then we could go back, but they would be billed? The
You know, the
city-
private side you're talking.
Yeah,
Bob,
private
can I
side, because the
suggest that
city,
you talk to Tammy about that?
I will.
Okay, because there's some, I think there's more information on that.
Okay,
You good with that?
I'm good.
Okay. Motion second, right, help me,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, we
any,
would second.
any opposition? All right, let the record reflect 4-0.
Number 13, scrap it.
Scrap,
Scrap it.
Scrap,
scrap,
good.
14.
14 is more,
Did somebody, just for, if anybody wants to know, our dredge is operational.
Oh,
Okay.
hallelujah. So we're gonna maintain the mouth,
Yes,
and where we're gonna pump the sand?
just like we did before, discharge it at the mean high water mark per our permit.
Okay, just like we did before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
we're
All
gonna,
right, continue on.
we're gonna be holding 2 public workshops, one on May 29th from 1 to 3, one on May 30th from 5 to 7 at St. Joe Beach Fire Station. The topics that will be discussed for public input are the dedicated beach parking, walkovers, 7th Street landscaping, and the canal and boat ramp pavilions and restrooms. So that is more of a, please attend, come give your input.
So we're going to be discussing the same thing in both meetings?
Yes.
Okay, that's just for people that can't make the first one?
Correct.
They
Could you repeat that again? I mean, what's gonna be?
What items?
Yeah, just the items.
Dedicated beach parking, walkovers, 7th Street landscaping, and canal and boat ramp pavilion and restrooms.
Okay. Miscellaneous,
Who's got this one?
anybody? Philip, go ahead.
I've got a few. The first one is, right after the hurricane, when we started discussing the recovery process, our lift stations and everything, one of the things that we talked about was the Circle Drive lift station, okay? We wanted to upgrade from a single phase to a 3-phase lift station, and the reason being was because you can't find parts for the single phase stuff that we have anymore. So obviously, everybody remembers we ordered the all new panels and all that good stuff. We just yesterday got the cost of what it's gonna cost to go from single to 3-phase from Duke Energy. And basically, I need the city's approval to, accept this. The cost for that is $42,919.65.
65 cents.
To go to 3-phase?
To go to 3-phase.
42,960.
42,919.65.
Are we doing this as a result of the storm probably?
This is all from the result of the storm.
Is this FEMA reimbursable?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Phil, these are the panels
These are the new panels, yes, sir.
for the lift station.
Yes, sir.
I thought we already had some being put in.
We do. This is to convert Circle Drive from the single phase to a 3-phase.
Circle Drive.
Yes, sir.
I think you have to do it.
It's just the one, this is just that lift station. We're not converting any other ones at this magnitude.
That's one.
It's one lift station.
we're in the wrong business.
Yeah, that's the power. I had kind of talked to him because he called me with something else. He said it was a chore.
Well,
Duke Energy.
Where is the lift station?
Towards the end of the Circle Drive right there at the beach,
Okay.
on the left. They've got to come down 41st, cut across 41st to 42nd, and then down to that lift station. That's part of the reason why it's so
And you
expensive.
just said, and I wasn't paying attention, but say it one more time, why does that one lift station need to be 3-phase?
We're converted over to three-phase because we can't find parts for the single-phase stuff that we had. And to go back with a single-phase was gonna be a little expensive, and we wanted all of our lifts.
Your purse makes a strange noise.
Sorry about that.
We, I lost my train of thought.
You don't need to say, well, I got that.
Well, the,
He said,
Next is ready to go, let's
he
go.
said that's all.
Rex made a motion?
Rex is ready to go, he won't get through. I just. All right, 42, and that's on the FEMA list, and we've talked to FEMA about it, and that's good.
Yeah, this has been on their list for months. We
Okay.
Just now yesterday got the
We
price.
need I mean, I think you're asking for approval to do that, cause that's a different purchase order, and it's certainly above our minimum.
I make a motion to approve $42,919.65 for Circle Drive upgrade to three-phase lift station.
Very good.
Second.
You said that without a stutter. I second.
Got a motion second, opposition? Nope, motion carries. Been 42,000 left.
Okay, we spend money.
I want to know 4.1 million.
Yeah, 4.1 right before that.
We got great.
Yeah.
All right, Philip, what else you got?
We just talked about Circle Drive, we talked about the berms. We'll give an update on the sewer project.
Okay.
From Miramar to 36th Street, this is on the south side, phase one sewer project. From Miramar to 36th Street, every lateral has been fixed and or replaced, cut and capped. All right, so all that's done up to that point. We started slip lining last week, which is where we go through the sewer mains and the laterals, and we fix it internally. That started last week. We fixed everything from 39th Street to Miramar has been done, and they're working back east. And we had a sit down with Royal American week before last and had a very in-depth discussion on how we're progressing. And right now, myself, Caleb, Dina, Thomas, and Jeff, we all feel that we're right on track to meet that deadline of June 12th.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, 8th Street Canal. Did you talk about 8th Street?
Yeah, we
Briefly,
talked about
so we've started it.
We have started it. We've put in the road, we pumped out the water, and built the access road, and we just started really hauling today, digging it out. So that's where we are with that. We should be finished with that fairly quick. That should be a very short project. The dredging at the canal, did we talk about that?
Yeah, briefly, but you go ahead.
it. No, we covered it.
Dredging at the canal, we're at the bridge, but everything from the bridge to the mouth has been dredged, cleaned out, and it is perfectly navigable.
Good.
Salt Creek Bridge, sorry, sorry. The Salt Creek Bridge is, we're ready to start, but we've gotta get the notice to proceed signed, which is gonna come up after the meeting. We're gonna get the sand moved out of the way at the spoil site so they can start immediately putting in the temporary, road / bridge.
Yeah, that whole.
We gotta do the permitting, but as soon as that's done, we're gonna.
Were
get
the
that-
people here that we have to talk to get that done? Those three guys that were here?
No.
Who do we have to get it permitted?
Well, the temporary construction.
Those guys, just not those particular people.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, what'd they come for?
To get us money.
Okay, I understand.
You're shaking our hat. You shake your hat, you need those people here.
That's true.
And this Thursday, we're gonna start hauling out all that bad sand, if you will. We're gonna start hauling it out to its final destination, which is a Class 1 landfill. Class 3 landfill, sorry. And
Not
that's-
beach compatible.
Yeah, non-beach compatible, tested positive for heavy metals.
No, that stuff hasn't.
Tested positive for something.
Oh, you mean at 8th Street, yeah.
For bad
Yeah, yeah,
sand.
So we're gonna start hauling all that stuff out Thursday. That's all I got. I think, hold on. Yeah, that's all I got.
Nick?
Nothing.
I have something. I
Okay.
just wanna say, Tanya is not here, and she's been missed because a lot of questions came up, but she was invited by Governor DeSantis to speak at the hurricane conference that he has having. So she will be speaking on Thursday. And I just wanna say kudos to Tanya for being, it's such an honor. I would feel it'd be a big honor to be invited by the governor to speak on the hurricane that hit Mexico Beach. So congratulations to Tanya. And I would like to say Philip Hall is leaving the 24th, so this is his last council meeting. I'm not sure where we could be without you the last 7 months. I really don't. You have gone above and beyond anybody, and it's taken a lot of grief from everybody because everybody's problem is the most important in their mind. And you will be missed. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you very much.
I agree.
Good man.
Good man.
Thank you for doing that.
Too bad,
Yeah, keep on.
Dana? Sandy?
Just a quick one. I'm sure some of you noticed there's a new bright shiny truck parked outside the fire station. It's not in service yet. There's still a number of things we need to get done to it before we can put it into service. It'll happen as soon as we possibly can. And parked beside it is a lime green Ski-Doo given to us again same as last year by Panama City Cycles for water rescues. So again, we are back up as far as that is concerned. And we are moving forward with trying to basically get ourselves back to normal. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try and get temporary buildings sorted out and so on and so forth. We're always there. We're always ready and willing and able. Hopefully you never need to call on us, but we will be there. And at the moment, that is it. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing. Adrian has given his resignation too, but he has many more council meetings to attend. So I hope we save all the kudos then.
Yeah, both of them, yeah.
Philip, wish you the best.
Yes, we do.
We really do.
Before we leave, I have a young man from Texas, and he hasn't prompted me to say any of this, so he may be wondering what I'm gonna do.
I wonder who Cool Hand Luke was.
His name is Phoenix. He is a reporter. He's 11 years old. And I'm gonna ask, I don't know that he will, but he may want to speak to some of you. And I encourage you to take just a few minutes if you have time and have a delightful interview. That's all. That's good.
Did it skip
I don't get into the school side of it.
And you've sat here through this whole meeting.
Yeah.
God bless you.
And he's a cool dresser. He's a cool dresser too.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
his name is Phoenix. I just wanted y'all to know who he was. He interviewed me the other day, and I encourage you, if he asks, give him a few minutes of your time.
Okay.
Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right.
Phoenix, this guy's interesting right here.
That's you.
Yes.
Oh, stay away from there. That's a big difference.
That is, that turned, that's a great picture.